don't want to be strong like man who look pretty. I want to be strong like bitch that fight bears in the forest.
Welcome to episode 19 of Bitch vs. Bear with your hosts, me, Amber, my bestie, Sydney. We are co-owners of Shield Maiden Training Co., and this is a show where we bitch, laugh, and chat about all the things fitness related to women and the LGBTQIA plus community.
Nice job! Nailed it! Yeah. We started adding more letters each time we did an episode.
It was really irritating.
I saw Alphabet Mafia on the internet. I was like, that's easier to say.
It is.
Yeah. Maybe we can add that in instead.
But you're the one who writes this.
I know. So this week we have a new friend on the show. Yeah. Ooh, that was nice. That was perfect. I didn't know that. So this is Lauren, in case anyone was wondering. If you're not watching the video, I just gestured to her, and so yeah, that's Lauren.
Hello.
And we met her through one of our new hobbies, rock climbing. I think technically I befriended you first, which that tracks.
That's true.
Yep.
And
Sounds
then
right.
yeah, we just kind of roped you in, figuratively and
literally.
and literally, yeah.
Rock climbing. We don't just like tie people up and force them to be our friends.
No, that's a different episode.
No, the way I met Sydney was she was working the front desk at the gym, and I was just high on life that day, I guess. I had like a lot of energy, and I went up to the desk to either go get like a snack or like something to drink or something, and I came at you with so much energy, and you gave it right back, and we had this moment where we're like, oh, we're friends now.
Yes. I think before you left that night, we had exchanged phone numbers and been like, we're gonna be real friends. Like,
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah. And then we went climbing with Shelby.
Yes.
And then we went to what is it? Triple Crossing down in Fulton.
Yes. Yep.
And I was like, this is where friendship begins. Climbing and then pizza and drinks.
Yes. I like that. That's where friendship begins. And then I made
It's much better than how Sydney forced me into friendship.
I did not tie you up. So.
No, but you did hold me into an hour-long interview for a job that I already had.
One of the greatest things
True
that
story.
one of the greatest things that happened at the beginning of our friendship was we went climbing with Shelby, and you texted me afterwards that when you guys got home, Shelby started looking for climbing shoes to buy. I was like, oh.
Yep.
That was great.
That
I loved that.
That was great. So, okay, I hate asking this question to people on the show. It's like the weird icebreaker of like, okay, now just unload all of your, like, why are you here? Like, existential, like, why are you on the show? Why did you want to, like, talk about what you want to talk about? I'll actually let you introduce it.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm going to shift to that. Like, the guests should be introducing the thing that they want to talk about. Because, like,
Unless we told them what we wanted them to talk about.
Which doesn't happen very often.
No.
Usually we, like, let our people pick a lot of
Yeah, I gave you 3 very valid choices. I was like, I think this is the most relevant one.
Yeah.
But I'll come back and talk about other things. But yeah, I'm Lauren. I am an MD PhD student at VCU.
So you're just trying to see how many letters you can get behind your name.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, wait, how many were that? What was?
MD PhD. So that's 5.
Okay.
You
It's
know,
a solid start.
it's a solid start. It's one more doctorate than my husband's gonna have. My husband Cole is also a medical student, but he goes to the University of Tennessee, so he lives in Memphis and I live here, and that sucks. But yes, he'll be done next year, and then he'll be moving here, and that'll be great. Yeah. So what I wanted to talk about today that I felt like I had some expertise in and seemed like it fit with the topic of your guys' podcast was like eating disorders in athletics. So I felt like I had some expertise in that, and it's something that's still ongoing, and I felt like I had a lot of insight to share. So that's what I suggested, and that's why I'm here.
That's
Great.
why you're here. We love it. Yeah, no, I think that's great for our show. I think you've mentioned several times, like, identifying really as an athlete, which is something that resonates with me, like always playing sports and doing things. Amber's over the corner shaking her head.
It does not resonate with
no,
me. Do not understand that life.
I feel like it doesn't resonate with a lot of people when it should. I feel like more people can deem themselves as athletes but don't.
I would agree with that. Because like I would consider, like, for the last, I don't know, what, 4 years, you've been involved in some sort of exercise or training program pretty intensely, whether that was CrossFit, yoga, rock climbing now, like running. You used to go for runs like 3 or 4 times a week. Like
Then I got old and hurt my knee. I don't do that anymore.
We can talk about the definition of athlete later. One of my bachelor's degrees is in philosophy, and so I will like battle in semantics and definitions constantly.
God, I love that.
But
cool. Okay, so what kinds of, would you say, like sports or activities have you been in throughout your life that make you feel like I'm an athlete?
Yeah, I've tried essentially everything under the sun. I did a lot of sports as a kid. One of the first things that I did was I learned how to ski when I was 2. Because my dad was on ski patrol. He had skied his whole life. All of his brothers and his father skied. It kind of like ran through that side of the family. And so as soon as I could walk, my dad essentially put me on skis, and I haven't missed a ski season in 25 years. I've skied every single season since I was 2. I love skiing. It's one of the places where I'm the happiest, being on the mountain. And when my father died when I was in high school, when I was 16, and after that, I decided I wanted to join the ski patrol that he was a part of when I was a kid, where I learned how to ski. And what was really cool is a lot of the guys that were on that patrol when I was a kid were still there. And so I had this kind of like legacy moment where like all of these guys that had known me since I was 2 now were I was colleagues with on the same patrol that my dad was a part of. So they really liked teasing me about, can I swear on this show?
Oh yeah.
We're not kid friendly.
Great.
Yeah, no.
So they would mention all this like stupid shit that I did as a child, and like really tease me for it. And so that was cool. So skiing was, I think, the first thing that I really did constantly all the time. We met rock climbing. I've rock climbed my entire life as well. I grew up in Washington State in a very, I grew up in the eastern side of the state. So it's a little flatter than out in the Cascades in the west side, but we essentially lived on the city line. Kind of, and the woods were really close to our house. And so there were always big boulders that I would climb up. And when I got a little older, my dad would take my sister and I out to this spot along the Little Spokane River. I'm from Spokane, Washington. Along the Little Spokane River called Minnehaha, and that's where they have a lot of bouldering, outdoor bouldering, that I did all the time and loved it. I'm a big reader. I would have rather spent my summers like sitting under the slide in my backyard and reading, but my mom was like, you have to go and like do something. And so they would put us in these like week-long sports camps when I was a kid in the summer. And so I did basketball, I did volleyball, which I then did in middle and high school. I played volleyball.
For those of you wondering, yes, Lauren is the West Coast version of Shelby.
Yeah.
In case you're all like, wait, this person
This sounds so familiar.
This sounds so familiar. Yes.
Yeah. So when Sydney was describing me to Amber before we met for the first time, she's like, "You're gonna love her. She's West Coast Shelby. They even look alike." And then we all like went climbing. And Amber's like, "Can confirm." So yeah, did a little bit of volleyball. And I can't remember all the other sports camps I did. Oh, I swam competitively for a little bit.
Wow.
And I, the bigger things were I ran track for the school team in both middle and high school. And I was okay. I was okay.
You did it.
I did it, yeah. And then as part of my track off-season training, we on the varsity team, we would do this advanced conditioning in the off-season where we would weight train essentially. And it was unfortunate for me because my coach, I ran the hurdles. That was my event. My coach was the advanced conditioning teacher. And so he kicked my ass constantly because like he knew me already. Not doctor, I'm used to call it now. Mr. DeZellum. He was great. This man was like 7 feet tall, bald, like so built. And he was great. But yeah, so I got into weightlifting in high school during off-season track, and I carried that into college. And so I weightlifted a lot in college. I did a lot more rock climbing in college. And by the time I was graduating from college, I was powerlifting. And I moved from college down to Memphis, Tennessee to go work at St. Jude for a couple of years before I applied to medical school. And this guy that I met on my interview panel, who's now my husband, he also powerlifted. And that was something that we bonded over at that time. And so I got the job and I moved down to Memphis and I started going to that powerlifting gym. Well, mostly because I wanted to hang out with him.
Well, yes.
But then also like really made friends with all the guys that went there, and it was a great community that really pushed you to be great. And I got really strong, and that was fantastic. And I got very muscular and lost a lot of weight and was loving it. And then the pandemic hit.
Yes.
And I couldn't go to the gym anymore. And so I had been athletic my whole life. There was never really a point where I wasn't doing or playing something. And so that was really tough in the pandemic, not being able to do anything. And then I just like kind of fell out of love with it a little bit because once we could start going back to the gym, I wasn't enjoying myself. I was finding myself crying a lot at the gym, or like sitting at home thinking I really should go to the gym. I want to go, but like panicking and not going. And so that, that was tough.
That's how I started feeling about CrossFit.
Yeah. Yeah. I did CrossFit for a little bit in college, but I have a connective tissue disorder. My joints are bad. And so I was finding myself hurting myself a lot trying to do CrossFit because especially my shoulders like pop out of socket really easy. And so a lot of the things that to push over your head, I wasn't able to do. So I stopped doing that. But yeah, then I moved to medical school. I moved here for medical school in 2020, and I was still having this like battle with powerlifting and weightlifting in general, going to like a Gold's Gym or something like that. Really still struggling with that. And I was never a distance runner, and I tried running, and I still kind of run. I signed up for a marathon in November, and like I'm kind of regretting that at this point, but we'll make it. And then I got back into rock climbing. So now I do that most of the time. So long story short, I've done a lot of sports and athletics in my life, and still try to do that a lot.
Good. Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. So when would you say that you started like identifying as an athlete? Like, was it like, were you really aware of it like in like middle school and high school? It's like, oh, I'm the tomboy. I'm the girl that is the athletic girl in the class. And like, I can, kick the shit out of any dude.
I really could though. I have a very funny story to tell. But yeah, so this kind of gets back to like the definition of an athlete, like we talked about a couple minutes ago. This is related, I promise. So I feel like when most people think of an athlete, they think of professional athletes. They think of people whose entire job and livelihood is to play a sport or be athletic. As adults, yeah. But I think that you can identify as an athlete, or at least as being athletic, if there is a sport or some sort of physical activity that you enjoy, that you do often enough, that if you were to describe yourself to somebody else, you'd be like, oh, I am this, and this person. I'm kind of empathetic, and I'm also a rock climber, or I also weightlift, or whatever. If that's something that, if being active or whatever sport is something that is part of your identity, you can identify as an athlete. You don't have to be a professional. You just have to be doing a sport or doing an athletic like hobby, and you can identify as an athlete.
Oh, I love that. Because I don't
like
think
it too.
enough people do identify as athletes.
Yeah.
And I know for a long time, CrossFit got a ton of shit for calling their people, their clients, their participants athletes.
Mhm.
And CrossFit was like, no, they're in here 4 and 5 times a week participating, doing Olympic lifts, gymnastics. Like they are an athlete.
There are athletes, yeah.
And I was like, hey, that's kind of cool because like
Mhm.
yeah, most people I think are like, I'm not an athlete. I'm not even athletic. And it's like, but you go to the gym 6 days a week.
But you do a sport, yeah.
Or like you rock climb, or you play on a rec league like volleyball, but you do that 4 times a week. Like that, you're an athlete.
Yeah, so this is what I was saying earlier, where I feel like there are a lot of people who don't identify as an athlete, but can and should. Yeah, so I don't remember a time where I didn't identify with it as an athlete. Like I said, I skied since the time I was 2, and I always had some sort of athletic something or some sort of sport all the time as a kid. And I was that annoying child that was like pretty good at everything I tried. I was like a raging overachiever. Like,
must be nice.
Like I said, eldest daughter syndrome. I felt like
We're eldest daughters. We didn't get that.
I mean, I strove to be high achieving, but
Yeah,
I was
I had-
not good at anything I tried.
I felt like I had this expectation from my parents, especially because both of my parents are athletes, to be good at things. Especially because I was usually good at things. I felt this pressure to always be good at things. That will come back in later.
Well, that'll be a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
It'll be the eldest daughter episode.
The eldest daughter syndrome, yeah. So I always identified as an athlete because I always had something that was going on, especially when I was playing school sports, or like when I was I swam competitively for the city team, and yeah, did track. It didn't matter what season it was. There was always a sport I was doing. So yeah, I always identified that way, and it was a big part of my identity, was being athletic. And so giving a little preview on the story, my first year of medical school is very stressful. I think everybody like understands that, but
That's why we're not. That's why we're not doctors.
That's the reason.
That's the reason we're not doctors.
But-
We didn't want the undue stress, unnecessary stress of it.
Medical school breaks everybody differently. Everybody breaks, but in different ways, right? You know, whatever. We can talk about medicine a different day. But all of the stress that I was under in medical school brought to light a problem I didn't know I had until I really started analyzing why I felt the way that I felt. And I realized that I had an eating disorder that I hadn't recognized. And I had this moment where I love Vietnamese food, love pho. I think that's my favorite food. And I was sitting in my house having a bad day, a bad month, let's be honest. And I was eating this food that I loved. It was my favorite. And I got halfway through and I looked down at my body and myself. I was like, I hate it here, essentially. I severely dislike being in this body that I have. And I was like, ding, that's a problem. And so I was talking to my husband about it, and to a friend of mine who is also an athlete and plays a lot of sports, especially sports in which being lighter is really important. And eventually came to the conclusion that I needed to see somebody for that. So I started seeing the therapist that I'm seeing now, who's an eating disorder specialist, and has been incredibly helpful. I still see her. She is good friends and colleague with a dietitian. I went to go see a dietitian for a while. And so things definitely got better, but things definitely aren't solved either. It's a continuous sort of struggle.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of people in a lot of ways with like addiction in other aspects of just like, okay, it's this cyclical thing. Like
Mhm.
at any point, if I'm not really cognizant of it, it can rear its ugly head and I have to be on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what an interesting, because I feel similarly, like I was an athlete. I played high school sports, rec league, all of that. I played rugby in college. Yes, very lesbian of me. Where I met my wife. That's all.
So stereotypical of you.
And so yeah, right. Like, could you be any more in a box? But then post all of that, like we kept eating and drinking like we were still playing rugby. Which, by the way, if anybody doesn't understand, rugby is a shit ton of running.
It's
right? Like,
very
it is-
challenging.
We actually run more on average than soccer players.
Yeah.
And it's just like, as a forward, you have to be strong and run.
Mm-hmm.
Those stupid backs, they're so fast, you gotta keep up with them in case
Yeah.
they get tackled.
Yeah, so not only are you packing a lot of muscle to be strong, but you also have to carry that muscle really
Yes.
fast.
Right.
Like I'm a big TikTok connoisseur. And somebody that I follow really closely, who I love, is Alona Mar, who plays rugby for the USA Olympic team.
Yeah.
And she really blew up on TikTok when she was at the Olympics. And I just love her. I love her vibe. I love everything she stands for. And she talks about, being strong and being fast. And she's so good at what she does. And, speaks a lot about body positivity and people thinking that women need to be small to be fit. And she's got muscle. She's strong. And so that's somebody that I follow really closely, that I take a lot of, not exactly advice, but I really take what she says to heart. Yeah. So she's somebody that I've really looked up to.
I think that's great, and I like the movement that's happening, because I think there's other sports. So like Shelby is a big weightlifter and follows weightlifting. Coach Mary Thiesenlappen, she has kind of blown up in the sport. She shifted from some other things, and she's a super heavy. Mm-hmm. So she's incredible lifter, and she's also like, I gotta be big to be strong. Like mass moves mass, mm-hmm. right? Like, and it's this momentum shift of like, you know what? I don't need to be rail thin. Mm-hmm. I want to go back to like medieval times of like, if you were plump, it was because you were wealthy,
you were rich,
and people wanted you. Like that's dreams right there.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be plump and wanted.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There are lots of videos on the internet explaining how like ideal female body shape and type has changed throughout the millennia. Yeah. I find it very interesting.
Mm-hmm. And my own life reflects that. I was my thinnest when I had zero money and could not afford any food.
Yeah.
I'm like, gosh, I looked good. I'm like, oh, right.
It's like, oh.
It's because I wasn't eating and probably was malnourished.
Yeah. Yeah. So the eating disorder voice that rears its head, in my ear, I named Karen.
Nice.
Because if anyone's been on the internet at all in the last 6 years, like,
right,
that's really
appropriate
the thing.
name.
And so when my therapist was like, you need to name the eating disorder voice, I'm like, Karen, fuck it up. So, so kind of, when I was talking to this therapist and my dietitian, trying to figure out like when this started, I didn't realize that it had started 15 years ago.
Oh,
I'm not tall now, but I was very tall as a child. I was always like over the 100th percentile. I was very tall. I was the tallest person in my class up until middle of high school when the boys finally hit their growth spurt.
Yeah.
So I was always the biggest kid in my class. And I really started to notice that, I think, like towards the end of elementary school, that I was so much bigger than all of the other girls in the class. And I have this memory of being, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9, and being in the backyard of my house and having a family member not say it to me, but to my mother, and I overheard it. I was like, doing whatever in the backyard. And they were like, her stomach's getting a little big, don't you think? as like a 9-year-old. And they didn't think I heard that, but I did. And that's like one of those core memories that like is so clear in my mind now. And then I did high school track, and a lot of the girls on varsity track in high school are rail thin because they run so much. And I remember when the way that we would get our uniforms each year was there'd be buckets with all the different sizes. The coach would like look at us and then hand us a size.
Oh.
That's great for the psyche, right?
No, thank
Yeah. And so this is something that I think a lot of people with eating disorders struggle with, is it's more important for me to say that I wear whatever size than actually being comfortable in the clothes.
Yes.
And so I was given like a medium or something. And I was like, no, I'm a small. And I made him take the uniform back and give me a small. And like it fit, but it wasn't comfortable. But it was more important for me to say that I wore a small than to wear something that was comfortable.
Yeah. I experienced a lot of that, and I think we talked about it on an episode, and it resonated actually with my mother-in-law of being like, why don't you just nobody's looking in the back of your pants to see the size, right? Like you're not going around being like, by the way, I used to wear a size 8, but now I wear a size 14. Like nobody's looking in like, oh yeah, you went up a couple sizes there.
Yeah, and something I've had to learn is that when you have clothing on that feels comfortable and you feel good in, you don't even think about what the size is.
Yeah.
That's something I had to learn. And so I went the whole rest of my like time from there. I felt like I always ate a lot because I was always playing sports.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, and I discovered later when thinking back on my life that I had this really bad cycle of like my dad was the kind of person who was like, you're not leaving the table until you finish your plate. So I always felt like I had to finish my food. But then I also got weirdly compliments from being able to eat large portions as well. And so I always ate the largest portion and all of it every single time.
Right.
And then I would feel really terrible about that. And I would really over exercise to burn it off, essentially, to earn the right
to eat, to fuel your body, to exist in the world.
Yeah. And, you know, into college and into when I lived in Memphis, that really shifted from eating the biggest portion every single time to eating as little as I possibly could, and then exercising as much as I could, and then hitting this wall where I was so hungry that I would just eat everything in the kitchen, and then feeling so disgusted by myself, and then, you know, go and exercise more.
Yes.
So it was really bad when I was in Memphis. It was the thinnest I had been since I was a kid. And I finally, it was like the one time in my entire life I've been able to look in the mirror and be happy with it. Because I was really lean and I had a lot of muscle mass. And I found myself eating like 1,400 calories a day, but seriously and really heavily weightlifting almost 20 hours a week, which was a lot.
That's not a healthy ratio.
It wasn't, but it was the only time in my entire life I liked the way that I looked.
It's so interesting because I did something similar when like we were getting married and 2019, and Shelby dropped, we were getting like healthy again, was feeling really good. She dropped a shit ton of weight right before our wedding. I dropped some, but not a lot, but then all of mine like came off right post wedding. And I was like feeling really good. And then during the pandemic, we had a detached garage. So we had a garage gym. Amber would come over, we would hang out. And at one point in that like spring, summer of the pandemic, I was running, I was working out all the time because I had nothing else to do. And I got down to 139 pounds.
Wow.
And if you look back at photos, now I can recognize and be like, whoa, that was too skinny.
Yeah.
There is nothing there. Like I was like, ooh,
it was not
that
good.
does not look good. But in the moment I was like, watching the scale just go down, and I was like, I wonder where it's gonna stop.
Yeah. Yeah, on good days, I can look back at pictures of myself from like high school and from when I was living in Memphis, and you can like see my ribs, you can see my sternum, and on really good
Ooh.
days, I'm like, that was obviously very unhealthy. And on days where I'm really struggling, I'm like, man, like that looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I moved here for school, and I was trying to be athletic because I wasn't working out a lot during the pandemic, and I felt like I was really losing a part of myself because I wasn't doing anything athletic, and it had been such a big part of my identity. And so I got to medical school, and I was trying to get back into weightlifting again, but really wasn't feeling it, and realized that the whole reason I was going to the gym to go weight lift was to lose weight. And it wasn't happening as fast as I wanted to. It wasn't happening at all, to be honest. And I would get so mad at myself. Essentially, the only reason I was going was to lose weight, not because I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so something that I had to do as part of my like eating disorder recovery was to just not do anything athletic, not to work out at all, because that was my like purging part of the binge purge sort of cycle. And so my therapist was like, don't do anything. No working out, no activity. Like go for a walk, whatever. But at this point, when I first started seeing her a couple of years ago, I was working out after every single meal.
Ooh.
I had a stationary bike, and so I would like eat what I deemed to be a reasonable portion. It wasn't. But then
side note, it wasn't.
But then I would get on the stationary bike for half an hour, or I would like take a lap around my neighborhood, like run around my neighborhood, or like I was doing something or like push-ups, whatever. I was doing some activity after every single meal, which was not great. And it wasn't until my dietitian, I really love her because I'm in medical school, I understand like some of the medicine, the science behind metabolism. She was explaining to me that by over exercising so much, my body was hanging on to whatever calories it could possibly get. And therefore I was causing myself to likely gain more weight than I would actually lose.
That's interesting.
But what was extremely unfair, in my opinion, was I recognized I had an eating disorder. I went and got help for it. I started doing what they were telling me to do, which was extremely hard, and I gained like 65 pounds. And am now sitting at the heaviest and like the biggest body I've ever been in my entire life. And it was so hard on me, and continues to be really hard on me, because at the point where I went to go see this eating disorder therapist, I felt like I was in such a big body, and then I went and then gained a ton of weight because I was finally eating like a decent amount of calories, and I was
to feed a human.
To feed a human, yeah.
It's not a toddler, but like a full size.
1,400 calories is the right amount of calories for like maybe a 6-year-old. And I was, getting back up into eating the correct amount of calories. I did have a little bit of what's called refeeding syndrome, where when you start taking in enough calories, again, it happens a lot with people with eating disorders or in alcoholism, when you're like detoxing and putting calories and like fluids into your body, your body holds on to all that fluid, and you gain a lot of weight really fast, and it's
your body's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah,
thank you for
it's usually a lot of water, and so I gain all this weight, and I lose my shit about it, and but I keep telling myself, and I keep telling my therapist, my dietitian, oh, it's just refeeding syndrome. Like whatever, my body will balance it out. The water will like come off, and like it'll go away. And they kept looking at me like, I know you're gonna like lose your shit if I tell you that that's not what's gonna happen. But so I kept telling that to myself, even though I knew it wasn't true, because I just couldn't handle the thought of like that's what I was gonna look like. I was so unhappy. I had to essentially buy a whole new wardrobe, which was so difficult for me to do. I really had to come to terms with it. I was still trying to like wear all this clothing that did not fit me and made me feel worse throughout the day, but I could not like get over trying to identify with wearing a certain size.
Yep.
And it took a really long time for me to finally come to terms with the fact that I wasn't comfortable, I wasn't happy, and I had to get clothes that fit me. So that was really hard. I cried the whole time, but I did finally get clothes that fit. But what was really tough was my wedding ring started not fitting. I got to this point where I was gaining so much weight so fast that my wedding ring didn't fit. And so I was wearing a different band that I had previously that was a little bit bigger, but I didn't want to get my ring. I love Gracie. I didn't want to get my ring resized because in my mind, if I went and got my ring resized to be more comfortable to the point where I could wear it, I was giving up. I was accepting the fact that I was not going to lose the weight again, that this was just what I was going to look like. And that was tough. And it took a really long time. It took like a year, for me to come to the conclusion that I wanted to wear my wedding ring and I wanted to be happy. So therefore,
I'm happily married and I can wear this.
Yeah, and so I made the decision to go to the jeweler and get it resized.
Yes.
And that was like, that was a very freeing experience. And one of those things, like I said about clothing, like once you have it on and you're comfortable, you don't care what size it is.
Yeah.
Like once I was able to wear my wedding ring again, and be able to wear it and look at it every day, I didn't care what size it was.
Yeah.
And I also only had to go up a half size. So
there's that.
I thought it was such a big difference, but it really was only a half size up. So it's an ongoing process. I have good days and bad days. I've been like more on the bad days side of it for quite a while now. And I've been like working with that. Like I just went to New York City recently for my birthday.
Yes.
We went to go see Moulin Rouge on Broadway. And
I bought tickets again.
I did buy tickets again this year. You know what? We can talk about it. But me and my friend Chelsea, who came with me, we took a lot of pictures while we were there. And I remember I was like kind of in that vacation depression that people get when they get back. Right? And I'm flipping through all of our photos, and I'm like, I hate every single photo that I'm in. And that was really tough.
I can empathize with that. Like I feel like when we started Shield Maiden, and especially once we started prioritizing putting content out on social media, it's been really hard for me to post those pictures of myself and post those reels of myself because my body is not what it used to be. And I'm like, this is not the body of a fitness professional. And I'm like, no, it's fine. Like you're doing your thing, you're being healthy, put it out there and just suck it up.
Yeah.
And it's been really hard.
Yeah. I mean, you're the one who told me, like, you and you have to remind me, like, I was in that kind of same cycle of, like, feeling like I needed to earn my food. I wasn't working out after every meal or anything like that, but if I was like, oh, I'm going to have ice cream this weekend, I need to make sure that I go to the gym on Monday. And then Amber's like, you're a human, you have to eat to live, and you don't have to earn your food. Like you just, like make good choices. Like we all want ice cream now and then. I probably want ice cream a little more than most people, which is fine. It's mint chocolate chip or die.
Like you're active, you're moving, like you're not sitting on the couch all day. Like it's okay.
Yeah, and something that I learned from my dietitian was like, you're a living person and you deserve food because you're a living person. And even if you're not as active or whatever as you want to be, that doesn't preclude you from eating the foods that you like.
Yes.
And so something that I had to really practice with was, one, if I was full, I didn't have to finish my portion. That was something I struggled with as a kid, feeling like I had to eat the whole thing and then feeling gross because I ate this huge portion and then like whatever, that whole cycle. So like not eating all that was on my plate, that was really hard. Like putting it back in the fridge or even throwing it away. I was my family was like a you don't waste food sort of family. Yes. And my dietitian was like, if you are done, and you will not eat the rest of it at some other time, it's okay to throw it away.
Yeah.
So that was something big that I had to learn. And then also, if I wanted some sort of dessert or something like ice cream or like some cracker chip, whatever, that I really liked, I felt like, oh, well, I didn't do anything active today. I'm not going to do anything active tomorrow. I don't deserve it. And it's like, no, you eat what you want when you want it.
I think that's what so I'm working with our friend Becca, who's a nutritionist, our nutrition coach. And I think that's what I like about her philosophy is that she's like, you don't have to restrict anything, but these are the things you should try and eat more of. And these are the things you should try and eat less of. And like focusing on making sure I'm getting enough protein, make sure I'm eating enough vegetables. We just started a new habit where like I'm eating my aim is to eat to 80% full and not like totally stuffed. I'm like, okay, this is great. Like I like that it's making me think about like, okay, what am I actually doing and putting in my body and how am I eating? And
yeah.
So
I think that's really good. And like Shelby and I think we talk a lot. And so like we will have a conversation, like we both weightlift now. And on Wednesday, we were both feeling like garbage weightlifting. So we're like, okay, well, let's think about this. Like, okay, well, Wednesday morning, instead of having our normal eggs and egg whites and broccoli or kale, we had like egg burrito essentially, and then didn't have 2 servings of fruit that day, didn't take our fish oil, didn't sleep well the night before, and also climbed too hard on Tuesday. And so like all of those things, like we climbed so hard on Tuesday night that Wednesday morning we wanted more simple carbs. And then so we ate it in a big tortilla and we didn't have as many vegetables, so we didn't have as much fiber. And then that just like all day long, you just then on this like yo-yo effect of like, well, I had a tortilla for breakfast, so now I need a snack because I feel at like 10:30, I feel a little bit peckish and I want to stave that off until lunchtime. And so just this whole thing. And I'm like, it's kind of intuitive eating because like I love me some ice cream and like I will have ice cream. But I also know like I can't have a giant bowl of ice cream. I have like a little bowl of ice cream because the sugar really affects me.
Yeah. So
hold on. I have to take a break before we finish. I have to do so bad. Sorry. Hold on.
Pausing.
Sorry.
God.
All of a sudden I was like, I have to go right now.
I cannot wait.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I can't remember what I was like going off about, but we can.
I don't know. Sydney was talking
We
about
can go to the next
sugar and ice cream and
Yeah, we're gonna go to the next topic. We actually have a really good one before we kind of wrap up.
Okay. What do you want to
Well, Lauren's going to talk about
okay.
body image.
Oh, boy.
Like for the female gaze versus the
versus
male gaze.
male gaze. Yes. So, if people can't tell just by like looking at me, very gay. But I married a man.
Same.
So, well,
But I didn't marry him.
yeah.
Wait, not same there.
So I think this is something that I can come back and talk about later. Is like that whole experience, but.
I'm always the straightest person in the room.
That is true.
I know.
But
I think it'd be way easier on you if you could just come to the dark side. We have
talked
coffee.
about this. I have coffee.
Yeah, our coffee's better.
Better coffee. Yeah, so I feel like the social norm, the social standard for how women should look is very much based on male gaze.
Yes.
I've had many male friends that I've mentioned this to. They're like, I don't want to hug like a fucking rake at night. Like, you know,
Oh, good.
gotta have something. So like, but
I got plenty.
in general,
You should put that on your bubble. Like headline. Like
Will not be
tagline.
hugging a rake.
You will not be hugging a rake. If you don't update that would be so sad. Just brawny.
but I think in general, the social norm, the social standard for how women should look is kind of set by the male gaze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of my female friends who prefer men feel that way. And I I realized I was attracted to women before I learned I was attracted to men, but I was attracted to men, and that's very like compulsive, heterosexual, normative, whatever in society. And so I like didn't think much of it because I did like men, and that was supposed to be normal. But because of that, because it's so normal, like heterosexuality is the standard and anything else is not normal. I I felt like I was always looking at myself and comparing what I looked like compared to what I thought that men would look like.
Yes.
And it wasn't until medical school. I was already married. We got married before medical school started. But it wasn't until I got to medical school and I started going through this like recovery process that I was like, if I were vying for the attention of a woman instead, if I were putting myself in that scenario, I don't think I would be so hard on myself with the way that I look. And this kind of came about. I have lots of other female friends that are gay to some extent.
It is a spectrum.
It is a spectrum. But most of my friends, most of the people I surround myself with, tend to be LGBTQ. So I feel
that feeling.
I feel like it's vibes. It's vibes.
It's vibes. Yeah, we got good vibes. I think I want it to not be a spectrum anymore, and I want it to be a slide.
But then you're just going. Where are you going to?
Straight to gay.
Straight to gay.
So the slide just takes you directly to gay.
Yeah, it's. We should make a board game.
We should.
Shoots and games. Hasbro, if you're not picking this up, you're missing a market.
Oh my god.
Trademark, copyright.
But this idea came about when I was talking to a female friend of mine who is bisexual, and she was like, if we were both single, I would look at you and be so attracted to you. I would want to date you. And I was like, you know what? Like, I find myself looking at other people or celebrities or whatever, looking at like women that I'm attracted to, and a lot of them look like me. And I had this realization that like the way that you look at yourself through like a man's eyes versus a woman's eyes has at least for me, very different, not connotations, very different guidelines. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What I keep picturing is like the color changing lenses, like on the like like it's just like, oh, look at that. Oh, now I look great. Oh, man view.
Yeah.
So something that I feel like I have to remind myself of, like, when you're married, when you're in a relationship, it logically doesn't matter if other people find you attractive or not, but it's still nice to think that people do.
I can see that.
And so even though I'm very happily married and very happy in my relationship, and my husband is great about everything and is so supportive, I still would think if I'm walking around out in society, whatever, and a man sees me, they're not going to be attracted to me, and that really upset me. And I could probably like go to my therapist and like dig into that a little bit. But
instead we're just going to do it here.
When I was thinking about it that way, I was getting very upset. But when I was thinking about it, where say if I saw some woman walking down the street who had my sort of body type, I would be attracted to them, and therefore women who are attracted to women are also probably attracted to me, and that made me feel a lot better. Especially because I prefer women. That's a whole other topic for discussion later. The fact that I prefer women and married a man, but
I think
that's really interesting.
Maybe that makes Cole feel really good. Like if I was him, I'd be like, like I win.
Yeah. Well, so Cole grew up in Memphis. He grew up in the South, and although he is very progressive, and his mother is very progressive.
I've seen him in a very tight-fitting pink shirt.
Yes.
I don't know if that means you're progressive, but I think it means you're progressive if you're in the South.
Fair.
So Cole also like I said, Cole powerlifts. He's very muscular. He's very tall and like lean. He's got a lot of muscle mass. And so something that I was really worried about, especially when I put on all of that weight when I started my eating disorder recovery, was that he's not going to be attracted to me anymore. Because when he met me, I was powerlifting in college. I was really thin. And then the entire time I was in Memphis, I was powerlifting with him and I was really lean. So he'd only ever known me in this like smaller body that I preferred. And then my body changed so much. I was like, oh, he's not going to like me anymore. And then something else that really upset me was when we were out in public, I felt he's a very stereotypically attractive man. And so I felt like when we would go out in public, people would look at us and be like, I have no idea why he picked her. Looking like he does and she looking like she does. And that was a big. I mean, it's still a problem sometimes when we go out in public.
This really showcases the difference in our personalities, because to me, I'd be like, "Ha ha! I have the best personality on the planet. That is why."
I mean, I had that with a gentleman that I was dating a few years ago, pre-pandemic, Mark.
I was like, wait.
There's only been like one.
I was like, I should know this one.
He came to your wedding.
He did come to my wedding.
But he was very tall, slim, good looking. And yeah, like I kind of had those same feelings of like, I have a picture of us together and I'm like, why?
I was in a friend of mine's wedding. I was a bridesmaid and Cole came to the wedding and there's a picture of us where he looks very handsome and dashing in his suit. And I just feel like I just felt like I looked so big next to him. And I severely dislike that picture, even though it's a great picture. And yeah, you know, we're working through it. Yeah, so I named that eating disorder voice Karen. And so when these thoughts pop up, I'm like, Karen, you son of a bitch. Like, you know, why are you trying to ruin things?
My life.
My life. Yes. So when things are going good, I can recognize when those thoughts happen and talk myself out of it. But if I'm already stressing about something else, if I'm already having a bad time, and then those thoughts arise, I can get really hooked by that and like get really sucked into that story, and it's really hard to get myself out of it. But what I love about this therapist that I see is I'll like say things like that. I'll say what I'm thinking, and she's like, "That's so fucked up." Like, did you just hear?
I love therapists like that.
Did you just hear yourself right now?
Yeah, like say it back again and think about it with like your logical.
Yeah, she's
like,
great. Yeah. So you know, it's a whole thing. We're still working through it, and I recognize that it's something that I will always have to deal with. It's not really something that goes away because it is born out of being a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
I had a very tough childhood for various reasons. And I couldn't control a lot of my environment, but my food and how much I was exercising was something I could control. And it became a coping mechanism.
Overachievers tend to have that.
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
We'll
That
revisit
childhood
that next time.
We'll come back to it.
We'll come back to that.
revisit
That's going to
it.
be a whole episode, I think.
Oh,
That
man.
childhood trauma.
Oh my god, I have so much childhood trauma.
Me too.
We can trauma bond. Yeah.
So it gives me my good humor.
Yes. People have also told me that I seem much older than I am. That I'm very mature for my age. I'm like, thanks, it's the trauma. And people
Shelby does the same thing.
People don't really appreciate that joke all the time.
We do. We get it.
Yeah.
We understand.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of LGBTQ people do. Ooh, another topic that would be great is like feeling like you have to go through puberty twice when you're gay.
Yep. Yeah. You didn't get that one though, you know.
No, I didn't get that.
Just
I got all the
other traumas.
I got all the
What is it?
self-worth and self-confidence and
What is the TikTok? The real that the heterosexual women they have to they have to like interact with their predators essentially.
oh yeah, I get that.
Like
Yeah, you had to go through puberty again. I have to date a predator.
If there are any men that listen to this podcast, they're not listening
No,
anymore.
Or they're the kind of men that are like
yeah.
not predators.
Yeah. There are men out there who are not predators. We recognize
But we
that.
don't know which ones they are. So we
Yeah.
have to pretend
They're
they
like
all
white.
are.
Yeah, so
They don't wear name tags.
this is off topic, but like when the whole Me Too movement was happening and then the not all men
Ugh.
like was coming up behind that. The metaphor that I heard was like you like open your door, there are like 10 snakes, right? They all look the same. One of them's venomous. You don't know which one it is, so you're still closing the door on all 10.
Yes.
Yeah. And or you have to rely on the other snakes to warn you. Like that's
They're not gonna.
like there's a lot of animals that will warn you if like because they also feel threatened.
Mhm.
Like why is that not ingrained in the human male species? Like, hey,
Yeah.
when there's one who is threatening the mating process, we should ostracize that one.
It's not cool to tell your bro that he's being a dick.
Mm.
I don't know, but I have also seen a lot of
Hint,
improvement.
it should be, because that's how you get girls.
Well,
Well, some girls.
Straight
Some
girls.
girls.
Girls that date men.
ones that are attracted to men. See, okay, it's men like Cole, my husband, and like Aaron Tveit and a couple other like men that I find really attractive that remind me that for better or worse, unfortunately, I still do like men just to some extent. But yeah, that that's a discussion for another day.
We'll block off another 2 hours for that one.
Yeah, that's a long one. But
Okay. You ready?
Are we done?
Are we
We
done?
good?
Are we done?
Any other important topics related to this current episode that we need to?
We
touch on?
have a long list of new topics that
I know,
we're doing for
right?
episodes
I
now.
hope someone was taking notes.
I know. I see tomboy identity,
we
and
kind of.
yeah, I feel like girls who identified themselves as tomboys as children are now gay.
I would say a lot, but maybe
Which
not
is
all.
very interesting, because I would have identified as a tomboy as a child.
I think, yeah.
So I just surround myself by gays.
You're welcome.
Gay adjacent.
Okay, Jason.
It's like a real estate listing.
I'm at the top of the slide, and it looks really fun.
but I just can't.
No.
I'm at the top of the slide. It looks really fun. All my other friends are on that playground. Just
I
one.
just can't bring myself to do it.
I just can't.
It's not for everybody.
Cool.
All right, we're just gonna end there.
Yeah, that's the end. That's the end. Slide down the game. The game slide. Come join us on the playground.
Our coffee's better.
Our coffee's better.
We buy our coffee at the same place.
But mine's made with gay love.
Mine is made with self-loathing, so shut up.
That's why it's so bitter.
So I have to sweeten mine, and you just drink yours black.
So hot all of a sudden.
All right, thank you for coming. We will have you on again.
Clearly we hated it.
All right, Sid, sign us off with the things.
Okay, follow, like, rate, comment, and go check out the Armory for the new swag. As you can see, I am wearing my night shirt, my pink shirt. I think I look different in this pink shirt than Cole does in his pink shirt.
Cole only wears shirts that are a half size too small for him.
He's doing it right. And I wear them 3 sizes too big. I'm the opposite Grinch. Cool. Yeah, go do those things. Follow, rate, like, comment on all of your podcast platforms. There's so many now. I stopped listing them.
I mean, yeah, they know where to find us.
Yeah, go find us.
We're 19 episodes in.
Yeah, right?
If you're listening right now, you know where to find us.
Yeah, right?
You
Share
have
with
found
your
us.
friends. That's what we should
There
be
we
saying.
go.
Share it with
Yes.
your friends. We clearly have a good time.
Get them to listen to us and rate us and like us.
Yeah.
And follow us.
And buy some cool things from the
Right?
swag department.
It's so comfortable. You don't have to wear it 3 sizes too big.
You don't have to, but it's recommended.
It's very comfy.
It is very comfortable.